We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for attending tonight's public workshop on redistricting for 2020 Glendora City Council districts. This workshop is specifically focused on the census data from 2020 and submitting a city council district map if you are interested. We'll be covering three components during tonight's workshop. The first component is an overview of the 2020 census data and the key next steps. The second component would be an overview of the public participation kit that actually has been made available on the redistricting website. And the third component is an overview and a demonstration of the online mapping tools. After each component, we will be doing a question and comment section. You can comment and share your opinions in several different ways, live by raising your hand using the raise your hand feature or the chat feature. By email, you can send me an email at publiccomment@cityofglendora.org, or if you think of something in the future you want help with, you can either come into the city clerk's office or send us something by mail by attention City Clerk's Department, redistricting at 116 East Foothill Boulevard. At this time, I would like to introduce Jeff Simomodi, consultant for National Demographics Corporation, NDC. They are the firm that is specializing in redistricts, and invite him to start the workshop.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Simonetti, and I'm with the National Demographics Corporation. We appreciate the opportunity to go through a couple of items today. And we have, as Kathleen was mentioning, have three main components tonight. So the first thing we're going to walk through is to go through some of the items related to the 2020 census data, which we have an update for you on. Walk through some of the new demographic data. We'll talk about some of the key deadlines that are coming up because, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but we have a pretty compressed and tight time frame to wrap this this redistricting process up. And then we'll stop, take some questions at that point, and then walk through some of the other ways that folks can submit either a draft map through an online means or through a paper map. So give me one moment here to share my screen so I can go to the presentation. All right. Whoops. Kathleen, can everyone see the presentation there?
Yes, we can see the presentation now.
Perfect. All right. So the purpose of today's workshop is to go through the 2021 redistricting process, give you a quick update on the census data, talk about next steps and hearings, and as I mentioned, to do a quick overview of the mapping tools. So we have processed your 2020 census data, and it is listed here. So the important thing is, and we have this broken down, you'll see this is broken down. This is broken down by the existing districts. Okay, so this is the population for each one of the districts. The important thing here to remember, and the reason why we need to go through the redistricting process here, is these two numbers here in these columns, the deviation and the percent deviation. So if you recall in our two initial public hearings, when we talked about the Federal Voting Rights Act, one of the most important things that it brought up was the tenet of having generally equal populations. And you have to have no greater than a 10% deviation from the smallest district to the largest district. Now, as you can see here in the new data, the District 1 has grown somewhat substantially, but as you can see here, District 4 has had not necessarily a population decrease, but it hasn't grown in the same manner as as the other districts have. So District 1 here is overpopulated in terms of the deviation. And to get the deviation number, all you do is take your total population and divide by your number of districts. Okay. So here, as you can see, your District 1 is overpopulated and your District 1 is underpopulated. The other thing to remember here too, as we look at, we have to take into consideration your demographics. And as you can see here, you have a pretty substantial Hispanic population, particularly in districts 1 and districts 3. And we'll go through some of the demographic data here in map format in the next slides. So here is the Latino citizen voting age population, and it's overlaid by the districts. Okay, so you see the lines here in yellow delineate the existing districts. And you'll see here, for both of the maps here that I'm going to show you, the purple and bluish colors are lower percentages, and the green, yellow, and reddish color are your higher percentages. And as you'll see, each one of the districts are numbered here as well, and show your population deviations. So these are the current districts, but with the 2020 demographic data underlying it. Also here show your Asian citizen voting age population. There are some areas of Asian CVAP population, particularly in districts 4 and 5. So final slide here, this is an important one. This shows our next steps and public hearing dates. So the reason why we have to get this done as quickly as we do here, as you can see, the deadline is December 15th, is for the simple fact that you are originally on a March election cycle. And because of that, we have to get the data to the registrar of voters and a final map approved by no later than December 15th. So we had our two first public hearings on June 8th and September 24th. California released their statewide census data, and that's the data that we use for the purposes of redistricting, and which are the numbers that you see here within this. They released that on September 27th. We had a quick update on redistricting on October 12th. We're here on our public workshop here on October 20th. On October 26th, we'll have a quick virtual update on the mapping tools at the City Council meeting. We need to have maps submitted by October 31st because we need to publish those maps 7 days prior to potential adoption. We have a hearing on November 9th. That'll be our fourth hearing, which will be the council will have the introduction to adopt the district map, and we'll have the first reading of the ordinance. Because these maps will have to be associated with the ordinance, they have to be published 7 days prior to potential adoption, and so that's why we have to have those connected to the November 9th hearing, and that's why the timeline on there. If there needs to be revisions to those maps, and say we have council comments and comes back, says yes, we want to make some changes to that, we can have a special meeting on either November 16th or 30th to bring back those maps for revisions and conduct the first reading and introduction of the ordinance. We'll have the second reading of the adoption ordinance on December 14th, and then those have to be submitted to the registrar of voters the next day. Finally, and we'll get into details here, and we'll walk through the website here, but if you have questions and to be able to view the schedule and to see the online mapping tools, our website is drawglendora.org, and we'll be showing that here shortly. So with that, I will stop and would be happy to answer any questions that either the council staff or the public have on this portion of the presentation.
Jeff, I haven't received any requests to speak either via chat or via the live participation.
Okay. All right, so with that, then give me one moment here so I can go over to the website. Just transitioning here. Okay. Okay, so here you will see the Draw Glendora website. Okay, so when you go to drawglendora.org, here is the welcome page. Okay, and there are a couple of key components that I want to walk you through. So the first is if you go to the schedule tab, you'll see exactly what the last slide that we had here. It's a full detailed schedule of both the past and potential upcoming meetings. And you'll see here too, we have, for example, our public meeting notice and our Zoom link. So if you are interested in participating in the upcoming meetings, this is where we'll post not only the agendas, but the meeting link and notices associated with that. For the purposes of going over the website and particularly talking about the tools, if you go to the Draw a Map tab, these are where we have all of your tools that are associated with drawing a map. So the first thing that let's go through is the District R tool. Okay, so you see here the first one, District R, and then you'll click here to access the tool. Before I get in there, I just want to let you know too that I'm gonna be walking through a demonstration of this right now. But if you have any questions, first thing that you can do is send questions either on the contact page here, or you'll see on multiple areas on the website where you'll see redistricting at cityofglendora.org. That is our email address that we will be able to collect either public comments, or if you have questions, feel free to send a question there. We also have here, there's a link to a training video that our president, Doug Johnson, put together, as well as if you click here, this is the District R website's instruction guide. And so that's all linked there. But for right now, let's go through and access the tool. So when you click on the Glendora site, this is the main page. So you'll see a couple of components. The first thing is, and we'll get into this in a moment, is how you can either draw your council districts, or if you want to identify a community of interest, you can do that here on the reddish orange tab. Now, these aren't filled in yet, but once a map is submitted, it will be posted here and show up in the public gallery. And if there are some that are either a work in progress, let's say, for example, someone filled in 1 or 2 districts but didn't finish it, you'll also see the works in progress here. So let's go into the site to show you how the online mapping tool will work. So when you click on the site here, you see obviously the outline here of the city. And there are 3 tabs, and I'm going to go through the first 2 now, and the evaluation tab we get to at the end. Okay, so you'll see here when we were talking about, if you remember in the first part of the presentation here, we talked about the total population, 52,725. It's right there. And this gives you your ideal population per district. So again, this is taking that 52,725, dividing it by the number of districts, which in your case is 5. And then we'll get to the how to draw your district here in a moment. Now, let's say, for example, that you want to see some of the underlying demographics. Okay, so you can see your total population. Okay, and this shows you your population area by census block. Let's say you want to see, for example, the Hispanic population. Okay, and this will show you the percentages of Hispanic population, or any of the ones that you select. Okay, and again, the percentages here. So the darker the percentage, or the darker the shading, the higher percentage in a particular census block. Okay, and you can turn this on and off as you wish. Down here, this will show your voting age population. So the one on the top shows total population. the one, if you click on here, will show you voting age population. So again, if you want to see, for example, Hispanic citizen voting age population, that will show you here. Okay. Now down here on the bottom, and I think we put together a few of these maps initially, this will give you some of the additional demographic data that you can get from the American Community Survey. Okay, so this gives you percentages, things of high school graduate, incomes, renters, where multifamily residents are, as well as some of the language is shown at home. Okay, so let's get into how to draw a district. And before I get into that, you can leave these on and toggled while you're drawing a district. So say, for example, like I said, you want to just see where the concentrations of Latino citizen voting age population are. You can leave that toggled on while you're drawing your districts. You have that as a reference point. But just for simplicity's sake now, I'm gonna toggle that off, but know that and you have the opportunity to do that. Okay, so let's go back to the population tab. Okay, and there are 4 components here. There's the pointer tool. So, and this works sort of like Google Maps, where, say, for example, you want to zoom in on a particular area. You use your pointer tool, and you can zoom in or zoom out. So let's start drawing a district. So if you want to start drawing your district, you click on the paintbrush, and you'll see there are 5 different colors here on the top. Okay, those colors correspond to the 5 different districts that you're going to draw. And as you'll see, when you hover over a particular district, that will show you that you're going to be adding that area. Okay, so let's say for example, you want to start in the southwest corner of the city and start adding the census blocks. Now watch here as I click, and you'll see that the population will start adding in this area. Okay, so see, I've clicked here, and you'll see that your population is continuing to increase. Okay, so you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either click on census block by census block, or if you hold down your mouse and hover over, anything that you hover over, and I'm doing that right now, I have my mouse held down, anything that you hover over will be added. Okay, so I'm adding a district, adding a district, adding a district. And okay, so now let's say, okay, I've gotten to a higher population than ideal, or that's an area that I didn't want to add. I have an area that I didn't want to add. You have the eraser tool here, and that works in the exact opposite of what we were just doing. So again, you can either click on the blocks that you want to take away. Let's say, for example, we want to take these away. Or again, you can do the same thing and hold down your mouse, and that'll take that away. Okay, now you can go back to the paintbrush and say, I wanted to add those in. Okay, so now let's say that's the first district that I want to draw. Okay, so now you'll go back. You go to your second district and say, I want to start drawing that over here. And you will keep adding in your districts. And it will keep adding and adding and adding. Okay, and you'll do this for all your 5 districts. Okay. So let's say, for example, this is the district that you wanted to do. Then you can go to your third, and so on and so forth. Okay. And you'll go through those through your 5 districts. Okay. There are a couple of other important components that I want to show you. Okay. The first one here is, see this point here where it says highlight unassigned units. Now you'll see some of these census blocks are extremely thin. So as you can see here, obviously we haven't fully filled out the map, but there are some areas in here. See, for example, along Foothill Boulevard. See how thin some of these census blocks are on Route 66. This will show you, and you can zoom in and say, okay, that's an area that I missed, but I want to add that into my, for example, my green district. Okay, and that will allow you to do that. The second thing that I want to show you too is that it will also, on the evaluation tool, show you your breakdown of your population. So you can see, for example, what your Hispanic and Asian population are within the specific districts that you have drawn. So that's on the evaluation tool. One final thing. So now you see here, and this is an area that I want to zoom in. Let's say, for example, here that I have this census block in the blue district, but I want to have that in the green district. For whatever you will click on, if you click on whatever district you want the census block to go into, okay, so it's blue right now, but I want it to go into the green, I will click on the green, and you'll see now it becomes a green district. And so you'll go through, you'll go make sure that you have your 5 districts, that they're population balanced. You can see your evaluation. Anything that is unassigned will remain in red until you assign it to a district. Okay, so the final step is, let's say, okay, I am happy with my map and I want to submit that. You will click on Save. Okay, so there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. So if you are ready to submit this as a map, you'll click on the Share Now, and it'll have either a team or plan name. You type either your name or you know what you want to have that. Or if you want to save that and go back to it, you can go to the Work as Progress and Save as Draft. Also, each one of your plans, you'll see here on the top, it has the districtr.org/plan and the number. That is your, each map will have its own specific link. And say, for example, you wanted to share that with someone else. Say, hey, what do you think about my map? That is your own particular identification for your map. And if we were to submit this either as the Share Now or the Work in Progress, it will get saved back on the initial site that I showed you when we first got in. So with that, why don't I stop here? I'm sure there are probably questions associated with the online mapping tool, and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have associated with that.
Jeff, is there a way for the creators of the maps to see the current district boundaries?
there should be, yes. Let me make sure, and I have to go back with District R to make sure that they can add in that layer. But yes, I believe that's something that we can do.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I had one, and hi, Jeff, this is David. Thank you for that. And I've been playing with my version of this at the same time, so I get it. I had a comment that I was going to ask for if there's possibility, but now having played with this, I'm not sure it's so possible. One of the housekeeping things we were hoping to clean up was possibly if we had a street that was a dividing line between two districts, that we had a uniform consensus of either the center line or the east curve or the north curve or something like that would be the divider to simplify it for a resident to know where he might be in what district. I'm not so sure this is going to let us do that. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And so the issue there is that we are subject to the way that the census blocks are drawn. Okay, so we can't. So for example, here, you were saying on the center line of the road. In a lot of instances here, particularly on some of the major thoroughfares, as you'll see, zooming in here, for example, on Route 66, you'll see that the entire road is the census block. And so, I mean, I think one thing to probably make sure then for people who are drawing maps, that if you encounter areas like this, for example, where for example, like Foothill Boulevard, where each one of those is essentially its own census block, I would recommend just uniformly keeping it in one district or another. So, for example, if you have a census block here, you just try to make sure that those are in one district, and that can alleviate some of the concern that you had there associated with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, the geography and the way that the census blocks are drawn are completely up to the U.S. Census Bureau, and we have unfortunately no ability to change those. Are there other questions associated with the online mapping tool? Okay, seeing none, just give me one moment to go back to the Draw Glendora website. Okay. All right, so now we're back on the Draw Glendora website, and I want to show you one final tool. So if there is anyone who is not able to use the online tool or does not want to use the online tool, we have two options for paper-only maps. Okay, and these are called the Public Participation Kit. So if you go back to the Draw Map tab, under the District R tool, you'll see the listings here for the paper-only maps. Okay, and there are two components here. And just before I begin, for both of the options here that I'm showing, they are in both Spanish and English. So the first one is the Public Participation Kit with what we call a population count. Okay, so if you click on that, you'll see, Kathleen, just making sure, can you see the PDF that I just clicked to?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Sometimes Zoom is a little bit finicky about showing PDFs. Just want to make, before I go into explaining it, want to make sure that it's showing that. So you'll see each one of these census blocks here has a corresponding population. Okay. And what we're doing is looking to get again to 10,545, or closest to that. Okay. So what you would do is, if this is a tool that you would want to use, just take either a magic marker or a highlighter and go around the census blocks that you would want to add into a particular district, and just have a running count of adding up the population numbers. Okay. You'll divide those into the 5 districts, and you could submit that. You can either bring that into City Hall, or scan it and email it to here, the redistricting at cityofglendora.org, and we will get those. We'll turn those into digital maps that we can show online. The second part of this tool takes that same idea and puts it into both a map and a spreadsheet. So let me show you the map first, and then I'll show you the spreadsheet. So the map here, you'll see basically has the same layout, but instead of showing the population numbers here, you have a grid of numbers for the census blocks. Okay, and remember that, because that's going to be an important component here in a moment. So the second thing that you will do is you'll take that map, and then that has a corresponding Excel spreadsheet, which is linked here. Just give me one moment, because that's not going to show up on the screen here. So just give me one moment to show you that. All right. Station kit. Okay. So when you download the Excel spreadsheet, this is what it will look like. Okay. So the first thing that you have here, there's 3 tabs. First is your instructions for use. You have your tab here that's called assignments. And then we'll get to this in a moment, but you'll see your results for each one of these will show up here on the results page. We'll get to that in a second. Okay. So as I mentioned, each one of these census blocks that was numbered on that PDF has a corresponding population unit here. Okay. So see here, the population unit 1, that corresponds to 1 on the map, and so on and so forth. Okay. This shows you the total population within that census block, and then has your citizen voting age population and registration numbers associated with each one of those. Okay, so here you can see the census block 1 has a total population of 141, has 113 total citizen voting age population, 3 Latinos, 80 white, 1 African American, and 28 Asian Americans. So let's say you want to assign the first, let's call it 10 census blocks to District 1. So we'll go to District 1. And as you'll see here, as I fill these in, you'll see there's a running total population. And this will tell you what your total population is and how far you are off from the ideal. Okay, so let's keep adding. Okay. And then let's say the next 10 I want to add into District 2. Now you'll see District 2 is filling in. Okay. District 3. And so forth. Okay. And then what you will see is, this is just for demonstration purposes here, but you will see that your population numbers automatically fill in here. Okay, and then this will give you your percentages that in terms of your ideal, as well as your total population and your deviation from the ideal. And again, what you're trying to do is with the same thing as with the online mapping tool, you're trying to get each one of those districts as close to the ideal number, which is 10,545. And so those are the two ways that you can do non-online maps. And again, the same thing here. You'll submit that. Okay, just send us this Excel. If this is the way that you wanted to submit a map, just send us this Excel file to redistricting@cityofglendora.org, and we'll take those maps and the corresponding assignments and turn that into a digital map, which will be part of the public record and will be for consideration at the public hearing. So with that, though, that goes through the online and mapping tools and public participation kit, and would be happy to answer any questions you may have about either the online mapping tool or the public participation kit.
Are we also supposed to be looking at balancing demographic within those districts and not just hitting the 10,500 number?
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, so we do want to make sure too that we're recognizing that we don't want to split protected classes. And for example, let's just by way of example with the existing districts, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me bring back up the presentation here so you can see. Give me one moment here. So if you go back to this slide here that we had on the presentation. So, and again, this is indicative of the existing districts. But as you can see here, District 1, the way it's currently drawn, is pretty close to a majority Latino seat, and that's something that we certainly want to be keeping an eye on as it relates to the Federal Voting Rights Act. And yes, that's something that I would encourage you to look at. And particularly, that was one of the reasons why I showed, and let me bring that back up on the online mapping tool. I think it's particularly important when you are drawing your map to have the overlay. Let me bring up the district R again, one moment. To go to the data layers and have your demographics and have a particular, if you have a particular demographic area that you're interested in. So for example, your Hispanic population, you can keep that toggled and just keep the check mark on while you're drawing your districts. Here, I'll just show you by way of example. You can keep that as an underlying layer, and that will keep on, and you can see that underlies your when you're drawing your district, so you can keep that in mind. So you can see that here, and you can also see that as well on your go to the evaluation tab, okay, and for whatever district that you're drawing, that will show you your white, Hispanic, and Asian demographic percentages, and you can break that down in multiple different comparisons there. But yes, I'm glad you brought that up, and that's something that we would certainly encourage people to keep in mind and consider as you're drawing districts.
Yeah, well, my understanding was that was the whole reason for electoral districts 10 years ago or a few years ago, was to accomplish this balance. So we'd probably be in the doghouse if we don't maintain that.
Yes, and that's and
Criteria.
so yes, and that's something too, that for maps that are submitted and before they will be considered, we will take a look at the demographic data that corresponds to those districts to make sure that there aren't any concerns related to Federal Voting Rights Act, or for example, like we were talking about, if you're splitting protected class voting. So yes, that's something that we will absolutely keep an eye on and flag in the process here for you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Would anybody like another demo of anything particular? Jeff, are there any other criteria they need to keep in mind? I know you've gone over the equal population, also the racial aspect, but what about breaking up or having parts of districts stand by themselves?
Yes, that's a good question. And actually, if you just give me one moment, I can pull up the slide that we had back in June that talked about that.
We probably should not create islands.
That is
no island.
That is correct. That is correct. So in addition to the Federal Voting Rights Act, where we talked about, and there's two main components of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and then there's there's four important components of the Fair Maps Act. So Federal Voting Rights Act, we hit on all of those today. General equal population and no racial gerrymandering, meaning no splitting of protected class voting. Then, if you will recall, on the areas that in AB 849 that are specific to California are and these are in order. The districts have to be geographically contiguous. Okay, so you can't have any islands. And by way of example, there are a couple of cities that are in nearby that are also in Los Angeles County that have maps that are currently that way, that were passed before the Fair Maps Act, that was perfectly legal, but now will have to be redrawn. But yes, that's something to certainly keep in mind, to make sure that you are fully contiguous. We talked about neighborhoods and communities of interest. Now that was something that we didn't identify any specific neighborhoods and communities of interest, but that would be the second rank order. They have to have easily identifiable boundaries. So again, either things like major streets and other particular dividing lines. And then finally, they have to be compact. And what we mean by compact is that you shouldn't go and reach out for a population that's farther away in lieu of a population that's closer. Okay, so you've seen probably some of the classic districts from other states that kind of look like a barbell and have something just very thin in between to connect. That would be an example of a district that's not compact. So trying to keep those districts compact as well is certainly something that to keep in mind. And those are posted in, I believe, the FAQs. Let me just double check there. So yeah, if you go to the website and you go to the FAQs,
Jeff, do you want me to share my screen? I actually have that slide I think you're looking for.
I have it up on the website.
Okay.
I want to show people where it is on the website. So give me one moment. Okay, so here we are on the FAQ page. And you'll see what criteria will our city use when drawing district lines. And you have that there. So we give you the federal laws, and then particularly the ones that are pertaining to AB 849 or the Fair Maps Act here are the second category for the California criteria for cities.
And Jeff, where does the traditional redistricting principles fall in? That's under 3.
Yes, so those are, and again, everything here is rank ordered. So the federal laws take precedent over AB 849. Then these contiguous, undivided neighborhoods, easily identifiable boundaries, and compact, those are rank ordered. After all that, if we can draw a map that complies with both of those federal laws, both the federal laws and AB 849, then we can go into the other traditional redistricting principles. And let's talk about those. So when we talk about future population growth, let's say, for example, you have a particular area of the city that you know is being planned for development and will be seeing a significant population increase over the next 5 to 10 years, and you know that's going to take place. You can underfill that part of the district so that you know that area will grow into itself. There are a couple of cities nearby you, Chino or Ontario, by way of example. Both of those cities are having some pretty significant population increases at the southern end of their city, and they could, for example, underfill some of those areas to grow into that. We also talk about minimizing voters that are shifted to different election years and respecting voters' choices and continuity in office. And so one of the things that we have to consider, in addition to what map that you want to propose, is your sequence of elections. So as you know, there are some city council members who will be up in 2022. There are some city council members who will be up in 2024. What we try to do in looking at maps, and something that you can consider, as long as we're making a map that apply with both the federal and the state laws, to minimize the people who would be shifted from a different election year. So let's say, for example, you currently reside in a district that would be in a 2022 election, and your line gets moved and you get moved into a 2024 district. We try to minimize the number of people who would get moved from a 2022 to a 2024 district and vice versa. So that's what that is alluding to. But again, those are things that we can consider, as long as both the federal laws and the state laws are adhered to. Other questions or comments? Kathleen, I think you're on mute.
I sure am. Are there any final questions or anything else you'd like to either see redemoed before we close the workshop?
No, thanks. Great job.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Just as for your information, as of today, you could go on to the city's website and start drawing your maps. We are setting a deadline to submit maps by Sunday, October 31st, 2021. That will give you 10 days to go in and draw and submit your maps. The reason we do need to set a deadline is because all the maps need to be posted on the city's website before November 2nd, so that the city council, those maps can be evaluated by NDC and then made available to the city council for consideration and introduction at the November 9th meeting. And if there aren't any other questions, thank you very much and have a great evening.